Cornyn.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think President Trump has done it again, exercising almost magical powers, turning Democrats into budget hawks. It's an amazing thing to behold. And of course, they reflexively oppose anything and everything that he proposes, whether it's standing to honor law enforcement and public safety and not illegal immigrants, whether it's eliminating the threat of nuclear weapons and the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They take the side of the state sponsor of terrorism. It's just amazing to me to behold. Sheriff, I was struck by the ranking member's introduction to his comments. He said, let the police be the police. And I assume that would extend to other law enforcement officers like you and the sheriffs and other folks who maintain public safety. But is the collective role and job of law enforcement officers like yourself to protect public safety?
It is, and I think we all need to work together. One of the things that was just left out of the testimony just provided is the fact that communication is important to this, and we work very well with our counterparts, and a lot of times it's because of the chiefs are driven by the politicians above them that don't allow them to actually work properly and cooperatively with our federal and other local counterparts. When you have that level of communication, you can work these issues out in advance before you have a problem like you know, what the senator was just saying.
Well, a lot of it boils down to information sharing, correct?
That's correct.
And even where in the Senator Whitehouse's circuit, the judges said that maybe local law enforcement can't keep people beyond their jail sentence without some other additional warrant. Let me ask you to go out on a limb here a little bit. If the two individuals who tragically died in Minneapolis who interfered with law enforcement operation by ICE, if there had been the kind of cooperation that you demonstrate in Loudoun County and the sort of cooperation that you've advocated for here, do you think it's more likely than not that those two individuals will still be alive?
Well, I can't really speak directly to that. What I can tell you is that the cooperation that we've had actually works well, and I do believe that that would have had an impact there. When you're talking about 287G and against Senator Whitehouse's information, we have an agreement with ICE, and our people are trained in order to hold on to people for a little bit, up to 48 hours after they're incarcerated for a completely separate offense with us, okay?
That's a memorandum of understanding between the feds and local.
That's right, and that way they're already in custody. All we got to do is turn them over. So they don't have to come to the community to do, very often, to do any enforcement operations. So it actually works out well. And to get on the front side of this and to have that level of communication prevents that kind of thing. But if you have politicians that are directing you to act in a particular way, it really, really messes up the system here. And I think that's largely the problem. We all want to work together. We work with everybody, all of our federal counterparts, all of our state and local counterparts, which I believe is one of the reasons we got one of the lowest crime rates in the entire country.
And you haven't, as a result of that cooperation, you haven't experienced any of the tragic consequences that we saw in Minneapolis?
That we've actually had, before that, we actually had people that had not been arrested by us that committed crimes, but anybody that's been arrested by us and turned over to ICE is not a problem. They're out of our hands.
And Mr. Wolf, you were, of course, former Secretary of Homeland Security, and our Democratic colleagues say that they won't fund the Department of Homeland Security and alleviate these long waiting periods that citizens are experiencing at airports all around the country. They won't fund FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, until federal warrants are required. Now, will you explain how a final order of deportation is a civil matter and that requiring, after that due process has already been exhausted, why requiring a criminal warrant would be not only unnecessary, but also destructive of ICE's ability to actually enforce immigration law?
Absolutely. An alien will go before an immigration judge towards the end of their dependency of their hearing. They will go before an immigration judge, and they will rule on their case. If they want to appeal that, they'll go to the Immigration Board of Appeals, and they could perhaps even appeal that outside of that. And in every case, a judge, through the due process, they'll have an attorney with them, through the due process, says you don't have a legal right to remain in the United States, and it's time for you to self-deport. It's time for you to leave. And we know, as I indicated earlier, about 1.6 million of those individuals have said, no, I'm going to defy that order. I'm going to stay here in the United States. I don't want to go back to my home country. And then ICE is coming in at the very end of this process, enforcement removal officers, to effectuate that judge's order, to understand and to remove that individual from the country. And in some cases, they are in their house. And so they have a final order of removal. They have reasonable suspicion that that individual is in that house. They have likely observed that individual go in and out of that house, and they are there to remove that individual. It's very different than a judicial warrant where you're just going in to arrest someone who's then going into the due process system, has to go before a judge, have their case heard, all the facts. That is not what is occurring when you have a final order of removal.
Thank you.
Senator Lulot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.